I'm really honored to be here with all of you this morning, and I really want to thank Jared for that incredibly overly kind introduction, but thank you so much for that. Really appreciate it. And I know that this employee stock ownership programs and ESOPs, how important they are. Just having seen and visited many of your companies, I've seen the enthusiasm of the employees. You will see the markers on the wall of the accomplishments of the employees and the engagement of employees in ESOPs because they own the company. And so I became sold in having visited some of your companies. And I was really troubled when I found out that the Department of Labor was issuing rules addressing that would harm the ability for ESOPs to thrive and grow. And so that's how I became engaged in this issue. And I think it's a very, very important issue because it's not only important in New Hampshire, but to the country that ESOPs have the right climate in place to continue to grow. Because as you know, many companies are converting to ESOPs. Rather than selling to someone else that may, or perhaps even to another country, they'd rather sell their company to their employees. And ESOPs allows that to happen, and such a positive thing for New Hampshire and our country. And so what happened is, sometimes in Washington, I know you'll find it hard to believe, but people come up with solutions in search of a problem. And that's exactly what happened with the Department of Labor in trying to create a new definition for fiduciary under the ERISA laws, a definition that would apply the definition of fiduciary to ESOPs, which had not happened before. And so it may sound innocent enough, but the implications of it for ESOPs are very, very important. In fact, it really, if the Department of Labor goes forward with this, it will, and by the way, this is not how it historically has been, so it's a complete change, of course, and that's why I say it is a solution in search of a problem, because this was not a problem that needed to be addressed. And what will happen is that if implemented, it will result in compliance and regulatory costs on the plans themselves and could jeopardize the availability of ESOPs, or at least the cost analysis won't make it worth it to go forward with an ESOP. And it will force appraisers to purchase expensive fiduciary insurance, employ specialized ERISA counsel. Now, I'm a lawyer, and so I was also a prosecutor, but I don't think we need any more lawyers involved in all this. But if this Department of Labor rule goes forward, you all know it will become more costly. And especially for small companies, the costs that could be incurred by this just become too overwhelming and don't make it worth it, which is very, very unfortunate. And if the rule is put in place, it can expose ESOPs to unnecessary litigation. And again, the lawyers benefit, but it doesn't help your employees who own your companies and who want to make sure that they continue to own and can get the best return on their investments so that they can have a stake in their own retirement future. I think that's what is so great about ESOPs, is having a stake in their own retirement and building their own retirement. So as a result, what happened is the Department of Labor issued this proposed rule. Many of us fought back against the proposed rule, wrote the Department of Labor and pointed out the absurdity of what they were doing to ESOPs, and they backed off. So one of the things we did to get them to back off is I introduced legislation that would overturn their rule in the Senate. They did back off, but this fight is not over, unfortunately, because we expect that the Department of Labor could repropose this rule sometime this fall. And so as a result, this session of the Senate, I've reintroduced the bill that I have to basically put it back at the status quo. It would reverse the Department of Labor's decision to bring ESOPs under the fiduciary rule of ERISA and would keep things where they are now. And I'm pleased to say that this is a very strong bipartisan issue. In fact, the co-sponsors I have right now for my bill, I have Roy Blunt from Missouri, I have Mary Landrieu, who's a Democrat from Louisiana, I have Mitch McConnell from Kentucky, who is the Republican leader, I have Amy Klobuchar, who is a Democrat from Minnesota, and Susan Collins, who is my colleague from Maine. And so we are building that bipartisan support for this legislation. I hope this legislation isn't necessary and that the Department of Labor decides not to reissue this foolish rule. But if they were to do that, I can tell you that we will fight this and will continue to grow support for this legislation because we can make a very common sense case for why what the Department of Labor is doing doesn't make sense for such great ESOPs in this country, especially at a time when you think about what's happening. When you have Social Security at a point where 2033 it runs a deficit, when we think about the retirement challenges that many of your employees face, and the investment and the return that ESOPs can provide people for investing in their own retirement. So just as a matter of public policy, this rule would be absurd if it undermines the ability of ESOPs to thrive and grow in this country. So that is what's happening in Washington. And I would encourage you, I know some of you, and many of you are from New Hampshire, I would encourage you to reach out to the senators in your state, your members of Congress, just to let them know that this rule would hurt ESOPs, would hurt your company, and encourage them, I hope, to sign on to the legislation because the more co-sponsors we get, Department of Labor, they look at these things too. And one of the reasons why they backed off originally was because the ESOP community was so vocal about this, and members of Congress wrote the Department of Labor and let them know of our concerns on this issue. So I appreciate your having me here today. I plan to aggressively push for this because I've become a real believer in ESOPs and your companies and the investment and the enthusiasm I've seen from your employees who are excited and what they're doing in your companies because they know they own the company. It's just very, very positive for our economy and for our country. So I appreciate your having me here today, and that's the update from Washington. And if you can help me get some more co-sponsors, I'd be really excited about that. But I will not let this go. We're going to win this and make sure that you continue to thrive and grow. Yes?
What is the bill number?
The bill number is S273.
Thank you.
So thank you for having me today.